Scott Lewis is CEO of Voice of San Diego. For those of us who are not from San Diego or immersed in journalism, I'm not familiar with the site, but how did it come about and what's your mission?
Well, there was an effort to augment the amount of investigative journalism that was being produced in San Diego, a way to add a sort of competitive media environment to a town that a lot of people felt was just not being as well served as it could be if there were a competitive influence with reporters, hunting for stories, investigating things. Mm-hmm. We publish online, 2 or 3 news stories a day, maybe 20 blog posts, and then various contributors and such. But we focused only on reporting the things that A, we knew we could do better than anyone else, or B, that no one else was doing. We don't always succeed on that front, but it has helped us maximize our efficiency as far as providing impactful journalism. Do
you feel like you're playing in the future in some sort of important way here? Like, are you defined in the future, or are you really just giving people an alternate way to get a lot of the content that they valued, already?
Well, we think that there's we are trying to engage people more than maybe newspapers had in the past. Not simply just put something up in front of them, but try to figure out a way to spur the discussion. Our mission is not just to do investigative journalism. That's the first part of the mission. The second part of the mission statement says that it's to educate San Diegans, to provide them the information they need, basically to make better decisions. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very solemn pledge. That's a kind of public service pledge that we've made. So we're trying to figure out ways to better do that, to better use multimedia and other things that can help people understand the issues in San Diego and make decisions off of them.
And for our Minnesota folks, you think of yourself kind of like there may be some differences, but in terms of operationally and mission-wise, you sort of like a MinPost kind of a thing?
I think that's obviously I work and talk with them as much as I can to share notes on experiences. Mm-hmm. We have a little bit more investigative news focus, and we also have a different effort in the sense that we hire mostly full-time writers as opposed to freelance contracts or something like that.
Right, right. Give me a sense of the size of the operation now. How big is your?
We have staff of 14 right now. And the majority of them are dedicated to some sort of editorial content. So mm-hmm. we have 7 beat writers who cover education, government, housing, the environment, and science and technology. And then we have another neighborhoods beat. We also have a photo editor and a web editor, graphics.
So how do you keep up, or how do you choose, I suppose, because you can't be at every meeting in town.
Sure.
You can't be covering, car accidents or even the all the political news of the day. You just don't have enough people. So how do you prioritize?
Well, the car accidents are being covered still. The organizations like us are trying to figure that out right now and actually making decisions. If a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, a plane went down and hit a house in northern San Diego. It was a jet fighter heading into one of the military bases, and it was a awful, obviously huge news story, national, international implications. But we didn't send anybody actually to the scene, and that was a major decision. And the point was that there was probably already several dozen news reporters of all different varieties there. What did we think we could add? We didn't think we could add anything at that point. We focused our efforts, and 3 days later did a story about an engineer decades earlier who had predicted that exact scenario at some point when a school was being constructed there.
So you can benefit from the fact that the paper's still there, and the television stations are still there doing their thing, and you can sort of you figure out what the value added is.
I think as people discussed in the earlier session, that there's a lot of duplicative efforts going on. There are people, dozens and dozens of people doing the same thing. Just a search this morning of San Diego News, I found perhaps several hundred stories on the Chargers' victory over the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, and it was just it obviously there's not necessarily a need for every group to do the same story, and maybe there doesn't need to be 40 people at the press conference, and there doesn't need to be these sort of duplicative efforts. And so we are by far not big enough to cover the county the way that a newsroom in the past has. On the other hand, we're big enough to do some very good and strong investigative reporting, some explainers that help people understand the way things are, and then to just tell narratives that engage people with the community.
Well, you must hire, and I've got if you have questions for Scott, we got a few minutes left, so
sure.
Send them in. I've got one here that I'll get to in a moment from Michael out in California. But I just want to ask you, with such a small staff, I mean, you're able to, I presume, hire very selectively? I mean, you feel like you
Several
got
hundred
only
people.
the best people.
Yeah, several hundred people apply for every opening that we have. That's both exciting in some ways for us because we get to pick and talk to some of the most exciting young people and veterans in the industry. On the other hand, it's sad for the industry.
Pressing
obviously.
all the journalists out of work.
Right, and so. We try to. We've had a lot of turnover that has gone actually not to other news sources, but to grad school. That seems to be our biggest competitor right now.
Here's okay. We'll get through a couple of questions here. Pardon my slight distraction while I just scroll up a bit, try to grab these quickly if you can, because we do have
Sure.
a few now. Michael Marcotte out in California somewhere.
Mike? Yeah, I know Mike.
Oh, you know Mike. Okay, he's wondering why Voice of San Diego hasn't partnered more with KPBS, the local public radio and public television operation in town, right?
That's a great
Since you
question.
guys have similar missions or so.
Yeah, Michael used to
says.
run the news for KBBS.
Well, there you go.
It's obvious partnership. There's obvious benefits to both. We just haven't been able. We're on their shows a lot. I go on there every couple of weeks for Editors Roundtable. It's just been difficult to find those economies of scale with them, and hopefully we'll be able to figure something out. We do have a major partnership with the local NBC affiliate that is becoming more and more sophisticated, where we offer content, help them develop content, but then also get the exposure and the multimedia function. Frankly, they've been very advanced with things like embeddable videos and other sorts of things that are a little bit easier for us to work with on the site. That doesn't mean that nonprofit forces you to think of things differently than just competitive. You're forced to think of ways to be different and collaborative, and so we're working on.
You feel like you're more collaborative.
You have to be because
of the way
funders
raise money.
and members, as you said in the earlier, they don't want to necessarily have to contribute to a bunch of different organizations who are doing the same thing, and so we have to make sure we're either doing something different or collaborating with people who are doing the same thing.
All right, so here's one from Griff Wigley. Griff, I think, if memory serves, in Northfield here in Minnesota. He wants to know how Voice of San Diego works with local community neighborhood blogs. Those people who are out there doing hyper local to the nth degree, maybe.
Well, it's we don't really see our purpose in actually in necessarily having to work with them. I believe that people are creating their own streams of information, and if they want to include a local blog in that stream, or if they want to include us in that stream, it's just up to us and up to them to be of a certain quality where that's
So you're saying there's no sort of content sharing of a formal sense that's happening there.
No, there's a lot of people.
right
I think and this is ending, where people were trying to create hubs where they would incorporate all these different contributors and such, and this one hub would be where you came for your information about local issues, and you'd have various bloggers. We believe that everybody's creating their own hubs, and that we simply need to be part of those. Whether it's an RSS feed or a Twitter stream or a Facebook stream or whatever, we're making ourselves part of that. Email too. We just want to justify our existence, and that is not by compiling things. That's by providing a service.
Maybe another question or two here. This is from Boa Lee. Looks like maybe in SP, St. Paul. Let's see. You have several hundred apply for one job opening at Voice of San Diego. Is it possible that this has less to do with layoffs and more because of a hunger for doing in-depth journalism, something that these applicants could not do at their previous or current employer?
Well,
Good question.
I think we do have a good reputation, and then one that I'm going to work to protect, and that all of our leaders are working to protect, as far as giving people the opportunity to cover things and to spend days on them, even months on them, and to be free to pursue those major projects. So I think some of that is, and I'm going to be working hard to protect that. But also it's a fun, cohesive team, really, and everybody is very passionate about what they do, and there's nothing more exciting than seeing a reporter come back after discovering something or uncovering an issue.
Do you feel like, putting aside the fact that newspapers are financially in trouble, that the advertising model is falling apart, do you feel like the way your organization is built, the way it operates, actually allows you to do better journalism than the newspapers?
There's nothing necessarily more holy or anything about our organization. On the other hand, the mission is to produce those two aspects I said, to investigative journalism and to help people provide the information they need to make better decisions. In that sense, then, it's everything that is invested in it is reinvested in that effort. And so it's, I think, a slightly bit more efficient if that's what you're going to pursue. If you think about it, a newspaper is trying at the very end to make money, and they will eventually cut or take care of the things that aren't making money and pursue the mission. And that has happened in San Diego. The Union Tribune is best known for its work uncovering the scandal involving Duke Cunningham, the most corrupt congressman perhaps in the history. And yet they when the trouble hit when the correction came in the newspaper industry, well, the Washington bureau that had that reporter was the first one to get cut. So it's not to say that they didn't care about investigative journalism. It's just that the mission wasn't to do that. The mission was to make a profit, and that had to be sacrificed.
And I saw somebody noted that no captions on the video. So this is Scott Lewis, CEO, right?
Yes.
Of Voice of San Diego. And coming up next is going to be Joaquin Alvarado, who is the Director of Innovation and Diversity for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I want to ask maybe one or two more quick questions here. My producer will poke his head and tell me when it's time to swap.
Sure.
How big do you want to be? Is there an optimal size for Voice of San Diego? I presume you want to be bigger than 14 people.
Yeah, our budget right now is at about $1 million. I would like to get it to 2 or 3, in the sense that we would be able to double down on some of the beats that we think are so important, like local education issues, for example.
But that's like a realistic goal that you're aiming for accomplishing.
Right.
I mean, in your mind's eye, I think this will be our last question. Yes, Anna. What is the ideal size for this operation? Supposing you could have as much money as you wanted, would you want to be as big as the San Diego Union? You're pointing to us.
Minnesota Public Radio. Obviously, no.
We're not that big.
Yeah,
we're not as big. We're not as big as the San Diego Union Tribune.
Right. But on the other hand, I think that if you didn't have all the costs of broadcasting and of all that stuff, if local public broadcasters were allowed to invest everything they're able to raise in simply producing content, well, that's how big I want to be. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In the sense that if a local public radio station is able to raise $18 million, well, if we were able to cut the costs of delivering information to the point where almost all of that could be used to just engaging people and informing them, well, that is the holy grail to me.